Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to take a little moment, since I have not spoken publicly. I guess I've met with many different groups, but haven't shared this publicly. I do want to thank the Joint Committee and the leadership for working so hard on this particular proposal. I can't help but remember early on in my when I joined the council, one of the first opportunities I had was to have lunch with Mr. Roy Hansen, who was very stern in terms of the duty and responsibility that council members had in preserving and protecting this extraordinary asset, which is our agricultural reserve. And I very much appreciated that advice, and didn't realize how quickly I would be faced with these particular kinds of decisions. As it was stated earlier, many proposals to develop the agricultural reserve, to incur into the agricultural reserve. And it's never been an easy thing, because there are so many competing policy decisions that we have been entrusted to make on behalf of our residents. And so this one in particular is interesting, because there is no doubt that climate change is an extraordinary challenge that we are facing. And so it is very, it's been very hard to parse out, how do we stay true to protecting what is an extraordinary resource for Montgomery County, and how do we continue to work on different ways to mitigate and really try to arrest in some way this very important existential crisis. And I have shared this before with some of the constituents that have come to, that I've met with, that my father died in 2015, and for I think the better of 10 years before that, he had shared with me many times how he had planned out moving to the Andes region of Venezuela and the border with Colombia, which is a very fertile land. And he planned to basically grow his own, food. And he would say to me, how important food sustainability was, because you never knew what challenges may come across. Of course, I'm sure many of you have heard about Venezuela and the challenges there, and realize that there are lots of issues. Food security is one of them. And I remember so starkly when, right after the declaration of emergency, national emergency here in our United States of America, the first time I actually put on a mask and gloves and decided to go grocery shopping for my family was probably April 2020, and saw the empty shelves. And it really, for me, was a visual that gave me so much anxiety, in the sense that I never thought I would see that here in the United States. And it began for me, I think, this thought process of how we have up until now been very complacent and felt so secure in many different ways, that perhaps we have now learned we should have never been. And so as I've thought about this particular ZTA, and the importance of doing something with regards to solar as one of the components for us to address climate change, I also became very much focused on the fact that, we do have this extraordinary resource that we could utilize, if needed, in different ways for additional food production. Because when we see the lines of our residents of all socioeconomic backgrounds trying to get food assistance and trying to get that box of food here in the United States of America, I became much more mindful of the fact that our agricultural reserve can play a real pivotal role in many different ways. We could pivot in different ways that we are using it now, just to address something that now has become real, which is the real possibility of major food shortages. And so again, it's not something that is right in front of us, but it is there in the back of my mind, because I experienced it just like many of you did when we saw those empty shelves. And so I want to be able to do something, and I want to be able to balance these two competing, very important needs, which is just a way to say that I am supportive of this particular amendment. because I think that we can begin and see how this goes. Yes, I've read all the different research on both sides, and I have appreciated everybody who has, sent over information, has tagged me on Twitter, has sent me articles, etc., and I've read them all. And at the end of the day, I feel like there are other opportunities that we also have to explore. And although I'm not closing the door completely on this particular proposal, I will be supporting these amendments because I think it strikes a balance for the competing needs that we have on behalf of our residents. So that's a way to say that I do support Councilmember Feetsen's amendment. Thank you.